Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show as we get set to talk Penn State men's soccer and wrestling, Booch, for the next 60 minutes.
Yep.
Who's with me?
Most important sports on campus, as I've always said.
Everybody's always talking, and listen, we may talk a little football, State College representing Little Lions advancing to the PIAA state playoffs, so good stuff happening on the local sports scene, Booch.
That's all I can think of.
Can I just tell you, it was, and the wrestling really was terrific Saturday night. We will touch on that. It was, and I will say, I truly think Mark Snyder does as good a job on play-by-play for high school football as anybody I've heard. He does the state high games locally. Has done it for years.
Yeah.
And he just does a great job of following the storylines, picking up on little things that are happening within the game, and just delivering what is happening consistently and with enthusiasm, and it's just it's fun to listen to. So I listened to that, the state high win in hard-fought District 6-9 title game over Williamsport on Friday night, and did not know that was going to be the highlight by a good measure of my football sporting weekend. Watched a good bit, pretty much watched the first half on the bus ride down to Spooky Nook for the wrestling, and then listened to a little bit, but pretty much just followed along online what was happening in the second half. And I don't know. It is so frustrating on so many levels. And if you had told me, I mean, I truly would have laughed you out of the room if you had told me before that Iowa game that, listen, Penn State is going to lose 4 of its next 5 games. Like, and I don't even care what the circumstances are. And again, I get, and here's the thing, when you step back, okay, and difficult to do, I realize, for all of us. But when you step back, right, the Iowa game, as disappointing as it is, largely understandable. Sean Clifford goes down. You're trying to, and I know fans were upset, and you weren't prepared on all of this. But listen, if you watch the Steelers yesterday or Sunday, you get an idea and some appreciation for how important the starting quarterback is for most teams. There are a few teams out there that, yes, can go to a backup quarterback and not drop much of a beat. But those are very much the exceptions. So to me, the Iowa game largely understandable, if not excusable. Listen, Ohio State's Ohio State, and I do think it's a really good Michigan team. And I think in all 3 of those games, Penn State, is right there with a chance to win at least 2 of those 3. And again, competitive with Ohio State. The Illinois game to me is just the one that, again, will just cause you to continue to scratch your head no matter how many different ways you look at that particular game. But the bottom line is, again, you've lost 4 of 5 after many of us, and I was leading the parade, thought that this was a team that may very well be destined for a Big Ten championship and a college football playoff berth. And yes, that looks absurd. Right now.
Or at the very least, just not. What is at this point a functionally lost season?
Well, and here's the other part of that, because I've spent a lot of time, probably too much time, talking about momentum and the overall feel of around the program. And here is the additional frustration to me for the program right now. And listen, last year was disappointing with the start, but because of the way the team finished, right, you kind of had a pretty good feeling going into the offseason. And because of the COVID and everything else, it's like, okay, we can we'll give a pass on that. And then you start the way you do, and it's like, man, yep, Penn State's back. This is, what we've become accustomed to under James Franklin at Penn State. You win the games you're supposed to. We'll see what happens with Ohio State. I'm going back again to before we hit the Iowa game and everything went the way it did here. And it just felt like, again, weren't sure you were going to get to the college football playoffs, weren't sure you were going to win a Big Ten title, but man, sure felt like we knew Penn State was going to be in the mix, going to be right there, battling it out at least for those opportunities down the stretch, and one way or another, be able to continue to build going into next season. Now, I don't know exactly where. And I've purposely stayed away from the message boards. I really have. I have not looked at anything, and I can guess a good bit of what's out there. And here's my thing right now is, this is now back-to-back disappointing seasons. I mean, I had no way around that it's disappointing. Again, whether you want to give the pass for last season, and I'm okay if you do, to a large degree, I do. But to have the momentum switch the way it did this year from good to bad, again, no matter how these final, Penn State can go out and trounce Rutgers and even trounce Michigan State and win whatever bowl game it ends up going to, and you're just not going to have a great feeling. You might have a better feeling than you do now, but you're not going to have a great feeling about the program going into next season.
Well, and that's what sticks. You just laid out a scenario nobody views as
likely or
the probable outcome.
Correct.
And the ceiling is you won't feel so crappy about it at the end of the year.
Yeah.
That's the ceiling. That's the best you can do, is we're not going to feel super crappy. At this point, I'm not going to lie, Ironhead, like, there is a small part of it. Like, I'm never rooting against Penn State, but I am going to be decidedly not heartbroken if we lose in East Lansing and end up with the consolation prize of a trip to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make that trip and can find myself enough time to be bothered to go watch the football game.
Maybe. Yeah.
Jeez. I feel like it's the least they could do at this point.
So now here's the other.
Poor Mel Tucker's trying to get himself a contract extension. I sure as hell don't want to be in Orlando on New Year's Day. So again, let's.
So the thoughts on Saturday for me, at least, are all over the place here because I've been the one careful, and I'm still on board with my statement about be careful what you wish for with James Franklin. But let's just take a few things in order here. One, at the top of the list, how likely do you think it is now? Because I think it's very unlikely that USC is even interested in James Franklin because, and not because I don't think. Let me just back up a moment, because here's what I think. And listen, again, if you know my history with prognostications, you might want to go help James Franklin pack his bags for USC. But here's what I think USC is thinking. I think they know James Franklin's a good recruiter and a good coach as far as it goes. I don't want to get into the debate right now. I think they truly believe that he's a good recruiter and a good coach and could succeed at USC. But I also think they know they have to make the splash hire here. And I'm talking USC specific now, not LSU and other openings that may be coming here. But for USC, I think they think they need to make a splash hire that gets their fan base fired up. And I'm not here to tell you that's wrong, right, anywhere in between. But I think now they are looking at, listen, even if we hire James Franklin and this eventually works out, and listen, there's never a given, right? Like I don't care who the coach is. There is no such thing as, hey, guaranteed if this guy goes here, it's going to be successful. I don't care what the track record is. I don't care what the history of a program is. We've seen things that absolutely should have worked, not worked. And we've seen things that, again, Bill Belichick and what he has done right now, he's pretty much undisputed as the greatest coach in NFL history. I am telling you, if you go back and you tell anybody when his reign as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns ends, if there is anybody anywhere saying, man, Cleveland's going to regret that, there goes the greatest coach in NFL history.
No, I think at the time, the narrative around Belichick in Cleveland was kind of the same story you hear about his assistants now. Oh, it's just a Bill Parcells guy who couldn't make it on his own. That's what I think most people were kind of thinking about him back in the day.
Absolutely. And so, again, there just is no guarantee. My belief is that if James Franklin were to go to USC, that yes, that thing would click and would click pretty quickly. Because I do think he knows how to recruit. I do think the Pac-12 is a much easier conference to leave your mark in than the SEC and the Big Ten. And whether or not you're satisfied with the mark that was left, he left a substantial mark in both the SEC and the Big Ten in his time at both Vanderbilt and Penn State. And I'm telling you, if you can do what he did with Vanderbilt and with the circumstances here at Penn State, I am here to tell you, I think the success in terms of, I don't know about winning national titles. Again, it is really hard to win a national title.
Right.
When I say success, I mean 10-win seasons in droves.
Yeah, and I think that's fair.
And I think college football playoffs, at least periodically at USC is what I would see for James Franklin. Now,
there's no Ohio State in the Pac-12. I mean, we're retreading old territory, but yeah, you're right.
And I just think, and listen, USC in and of itself still draws. I mean, they're still getting good recruits and have been all throughout the recent struggles, and that's with the NCAA issues and all of it. It's just an attractive school. It's an attractive location. And it's in a great spot for football talent. And listen, James Franklin, I think going there with roots in the Southeast and the Northeast to go with a very fertile recruiting ground in California. I don't know with certainty, but I would feel very confident about James Franklin having success there. I just don't know now. And especially if there is another loss coming, and I think that's, at least certainly a possibility, if not a probability, with Michigan State and the bowl game, at least another loss, again, possible, maybe likely. I just don't know that if you're USC, again, that's a coach that's coming off back-to-back 5-loss seasons. Is your fan base, regardless of what you can point to, and again, no question, you can point to plenty and say, listen, yes, this is why you should be fired up. I don't know that that's a real sellable commodity for the athletic department to hey, here's and again, I can certainly play the other side, but I just don't know that USC right now would go the James Franklin route. And that's, again, on one hand, that's ridiculous. It's one season and a couple of tough games. And but welcome to the fickle nature of fans and of college football and big time coaching, period.
Well, to hear James say it in his press conference today, he still strikes me as a guy who thinks that these jobs are his to turn down.
Yeah, and I just don't know that that's the case.
Yeah, I really don't think so. I mean, look, as you said, number one, it's a fickle business. Now, I have been told by numerous talking heads this season that, what a coach does the year before doesn't matter because every school will convince themselves that, they're the one who can change him, right? Like, he's just not getting enough support at Penn State. It's in the middle of cow country, whatever. This is glitz and glamour LA. We get him out here. We punch our ticket to the playoffs. So forget what he does. I will tell you that none of these places that has a chance to go to the playoffs and compete for a national championship has a patient or rational group of fans or boosters. Yeah. None of them. And, you and I have talked about it before. On the sliding scale, Penn State is as good as you're going to get. You're not going to get more patience or more rationality.
Yep.
And frankly, both are in short supply here. So it's a short, miserable trip to even less of both anywhere else you go. And the one thing about a season like this one is, to me, it already plants the seed with anyone in your fan base, in the community of financial backers who are not 100% behind bringing you in, that this is a guy who can't get it done. And I think it already, it's like the well's poisoned before you even win the press conference after you get hired, right?
Yeah, I agreed. And that's why, again, I think it's...
If I were writing the column, if I were USC guy, I had no emotional investment on where James Franklin was coaching, I would probably be a big believer in let's get this guy here. I would look at what he did at Vanderbilt and say that's remarkable. If you look at the recruiting classes and the talent that James has brought in and where the program was when he got hired, you can still make a really compelling argument for him having done a remarkable job at Penn State. So if I'm a USC guy, I am looking at that and thinking yeah, let's bring this guy in. But I always do like to try to look at both sides of the issue and say, I wrote a column at the beginning of the year about the state of Penn State football. And I kind of said, here's the bad, here's the glass half empty, here's the glass half full. If I'm USC columnist or, TV guy or whatever, covering that program, I look at this and say, just like I just did, Vanderbilt, Penn State, great results, but blown fourth quarter leads, losses to bad teams with inferior talent, Maryland's, Illinois. These are the Oregon States of the world that have come up and nipped this program in the past. This is a guy who got his butt handed to him twice by Mark D'Antonio coached Michigan State teams, which to me look and feel a lot like David Shaw coached Stanford teams. Yeah. May not have the best talent top to bottom on the roster, but they're fundamentally sound. They're going to fight you for 4 quarters. And we've already seen Stanford come in and maybe muck up Oregon's chance to represent the Pac-12 in the playoffs. Let's give the guy a chance, but don't be surprised if you're pulling your hair out after 1 or 2 games where he's brought in a glitzy, incredible, exciting top 5 recruiting class, and we lose to Arizona State on the road in week 9.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that, and I've got way more evidence to back that up after the guy has coached back-to-back 5+ loss seasons, which is probably a more likely outcome than a 4-loss final at the end of 2021 for Penn State. At this point.
And again, even if it does end up that best case scenario, it's that's still 9 losses over the last 2 seasons, and I agree. I think most programs looking for a new coach, you can bypass a year. Right. But I think it's more difficult to bypass 2 years with the results and with the bad losses that Penn State had. Again,
we also want to tell the story of 4 years with 3 New Year's Six bowls. Well, the most recent 4 years, 4 losses in 2018, 5 losses in 2019, in 2020, and then 4 losses and counting in 2021. No sport is more what have you done for me lately than football. And the most recent sample size you've got on James gives you pause at least, right?
Well, and here's so bring it back to Penn State. Let's just say James Franklin is staying here definitively, and another new contract has worked out or whatever, but he's back and happy and ready to go for next season. Here is the question I have for Penn State fans, because and listen, there's a lot of variables here. I am of the very strong belief that you're going to be breaking in a new starting quarterback next year.
Yeah, probably.
And if that is the case, and again, I'm not sure. Well, let me ask you this. And it's nothing against. Do you think fans would be more excited next season to have the hotshot kid coming out of? And listen, it could very well be neither of these, and I think the most likely scenario again would be neither of these. But fan base, you're more excited to have the new hotshot coming in, true freshman taking over the reins with a pretty veteran team. Again, we'll have to wait and see. There's going to be a few decisions to be made here from some of the players on this roster, and that will have a bearing, I think, on that outlook for next year.
Yeah.
But Sean Clifford, given again now the overall track record with another year of experience under his belt, and presumably, and I guess I shouldn't presume anything, I'm assuming we're going to have the same offensive coordinator back next season. Although I will say I don't think anything is guaranteed in this day and age of Penn State or college football, period, when it comes to the staffs. And that could be either because James Franklin decides, nope, we need another offensive coordinator, or he says, you know what,
he goes somewhere else.
I see,
yep,
I see where this is going, and it just doesn't feel like the right fit for me, and he leaves, right? Like you don't know right now how any of that's going to play out.
By the way, everything you just said just makes me miserable. Like it is.
I'm with you.
It is an undeniable fact to me, and it's probably just because I'm getting old and cranky.
Yep.
Following college football is like, and following Penn State football specifically, is considerably less enjoyable than it used to be for me. Like this has been one of the most miserable seasons in terms of the dumb, vicious, backwards discourse between our own fan base and the media who follows them or who covers them.
Yeah.
I have found the year in and year light gaslighting of the alumni and fans of this university by James and his agent to be exhausting.
Yeah.
And I'm just, at this point, I just can't wait for it to be over. I frankly, at this point, Ironhead, I'm getting close to the point where I don't even give a crap whether he's here in January or not. Just give us a freaking answer.
Yeah. Let us know, and let's move on one way or the other.
I am not. I am in this weird place that to me feels rational, but it is in such a small minority. I like, again, going back to the gaslighting point, I don't know if I'm nuts or the world is, but I think it's possible to believe that Penn State needs to continue to invest in resources in the football program, number one. That number two, whether it's necessary to win a national championship or not, I don't want this place to be into a football, uber alles football factory where we are spending orders of magnitude more on luxuries for the football program than we are for the rest of the operation at a research university or not. And I think I ought to still be allowed to be a fan in that case, right? I think those two things are true, but I also don't think whether one or both of them are in fact the truth, that it excuses some of the screw-ups we have had from the head coach on down in talent development and in-game decision-making. I think all of those things can be true to varying degrees at once. And so our inability to have carrying capacity for one or more of those ideas to live in our brains at the same time is one of the many reasons that, like, I just don't enjoy it like I used to. But to your question about Sean Clifford, would the fans be happier to have the bright, shiny new object in Drew Allar? And listen, I'm thrilled to have Drew Allar coming in here because he looks like
I think everybody
absolute world beater.
Yep.
The answer is obviously yes, for the same reason that James Franklin thinks he's not going to make stupid in-game coaching decisions and screw up clock management at LSU or USC, because we're all human. We all think the grass is greener on the other side, and we're all morons from James on down to yours truly. So, yeah, I think people would love to have the new guy, but mostly for the fact that he's the new guy. Now,
he hasn't had a chance to make
he hasn't pissed anybody off
yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One thing is for sure. If James decides that his future lies at Southern Cal or at Louisiana State, which I think is off the table. I think there is no way LSU is hiring a guy who went 8-4 or worse the year before they hired him. That's not happening. But if he really believes that and he goes somewhere else, every fan in Nittany Nation will be dreaming of the national championship that's right around the corner with like Matt Rule or Joe Moorhead or Bill O'Brien or Jay Paterno or whoever. I'm kidding. It's not going to be Jay Paterno.
It will be interesting, if, playing out the hypothetical, if James leaves and goes to the greener pastures, wherever they may be, it is going to be interesting, right, to see how the search proceeds, and then obviously who ultimately is the next coach. And then that next 5 years becomes the most pivotal 5 years, because it's always, as to your point earlier, it's always the most recent.
Honestly, here is what I want, man. This is what I want more than anything. And I have said this going back to the point about the patience and relative sanity of this fan base and this university.
Yep.
You know this, Ironhead. Penn State doesn't fire coaches. Number one, we've got more patience than I think almost any institution, not just with our football coach, but with all of our coaches.
Which, can I just say, for me, as an alum and somebody that grew up in this area, well, never grew up, was raised in this area, it is one of the things that I truly most like about this university.
Absolutely, so do I.
Is that it is about more than just wins and losses, and the success with Otter thing. I get that it's easy to poke fun at and have fun with, but
and I mean, my God, if you want to watch and root for a team where winning and losing is the sole metric by which success is measured, there's like a dozen professional sports in this country.
Yeah.
I don't need to have, I have filled my quota of wins and losses, and that's it with the Eagles, man. Like, that's what the NFL is for. I don't understand this insistence, which to me feels relatively new, that if you don't treat college football like it's professional football, and the college part gets totally lopped off, and no idea, no concept of community or institutional values can come into how you consume and enjoy the sport, and how it comes to your assessment of the job a coach is doing, that you're not even allowed to be a fan. I don't know where that came from. And the craziest thing to me is that, that's for good or ill. Like, I'm on the wrong side. I'm 40, Ironhead. I ain't changing. Like, that's the way I consume the sport. That's the way I'm a college football fan.
Yeah.
And all of that leads me to be more supportive of keeping James Franklin here than I think a lot of people who are just looking at wins and losses. But at the same time, the vocal part of the fan base and the press who covers Penn State, they seem to be the ones who want to be the biggest James Franklin cheerleaders. And it's all the stuff that I care about that is leading me personally to say, like, yeah, keep the guy, because we're winning, but also like doing things right off the field. Like, that's the stuff they're saying. Like, if you think about that at all, if that factors into your thinking in the least bit, if your view of this program extends beyond how many hundreds of millions of dollars in the middle of a recession, when the campus food bank can't keep its shelves stocked for a neon foot massagers at every player's locker, and wins and losses. If you think of the sport in anything other than the most cynical context of wins and losses and recruiting class rankings, you're not just a bad fan, you're not a fan, and you're driving James Franklin out of here. Like, that makes me want to scream. I honestly, I hate saying it. I can't wait for this season to be over, because I am sick of being condescended to by the people who cover this team in the press, and I'm sick of being gaslit by James and his agent. Like, either stay or go. But for once, Ironhead, I just want to go through 12 games without spending 9.5 of them worrying about whether James Franklin's going to go to USC. Just stay or go.
Yeah.
I want you to stay, but Christ, just make a decision and stick with it.
Yeah,
and if it's going to take neon foot massagers to just come out and say it. When somebody comes to you, you've been given like a dozen opportunities in press conferences to say exactly what you want Penn State to spend on and how much you want them to spend. Just say it. Say it,
at some
James.
point, right?
By the way, one last thing. I have it on.
To be enough at some point too, though. Then,
well, let me just real quick. I have it on
just
good
for the
authority.
next 6 months, we're good. It has to be. Listen,
did we just do this all in 2019?
Yes, it needs to be okay. I really appreciate the commitment, the 5-year contract extension, and I am guaranteeing you, right, that I'm here for at least the next 4. I'm not going to entertain
I have it on good authority.
Some sort of additional commitment once that commitment keeps getting made to you over and over.
I have it on good authority that when James goes to the Board of Trustees and privately asks for facilities upgrades, more staffing, salary pool, yada, 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 he gets it. And as a matter of fact, there's been a willingness to do more, and he has not pushed the issue. So, again, I don't know what this dance is all about, but I am sick and tired of it. And the fact that we're 8-4 and not, 10-1 or 9-2 or whatever. Here, I'm counting the Rutgers win as a win. I better not do that, Ironhead.
You better not.
Yeah.
Better not.
Regardless, the point is that there is not a lack of willingness to support football at Penn State. There's not. I don't care that Jay Paterno gave us a speech before he lost a 27-6 vote that didn't have a prayer in hell of going anyway, but the way it did, and not a single person can name anyone other than Jay Paterno and potentially Anthony Lebrano, who cast those 6 dissenting votes, and nobody cares. I'm tired of every time every program tweets out a professionally produced video of their facilities. Somebody else shares that and they're like, oh, look at this. This is why we lost to Illinois, as if we didn't just put out one of those videos 2 goddamn years ago, Ironhead. What is going on? I hate it. I hate it. I'm just sick of it.
And along those
lines,
everybody. Along those lines, can I ask? And listen, I've never been, and I wouldn't be able to do it. The recruiting game is just not. There is a part of me that thinks coaching would be a wonderful calling and would be, and I think there would be elements. It would be a lot of fun. Obviously, it would be a lot of hard work. It's a much different lifestyle than I think many realize in terms of you talk about being all in on a job and being, there are people that like to, hey, I'm leaving the job at the office. That doesn't happen if you're a football coach, okay?
No.
I mean, you might be, you might be able to get away with it for a half hour or an hour for dinner with your family, maybe, but you are not putting your concerns of the job away when you leave the football facility. That's it's kind of like being a president, or it is an all-consuming job, and you're constantly and you can't help it. I mean, even if you try to, you have to be thinking about, all right, this is how we can upgrade here. This is I got to help this kid out here.
I got to text this 17-year-old.
Yeah, and
17 times today because Jimbo Fisher is going to text him 16 times.
So here's my question, though, and this is a serious question. Do you really think? And I think we've talked about this before, and Goon I'll let him speak for himself when he gets back on, but I think I'm paraphrasing fairly closely that, to get the kids today with the way they're being raised and everything today is, you do have to wow them. But do you really this, and it's a genuine question, and I don't know that anybody has any kind of definitive answer, but and listen, I was somebody that was never even an afterthought in terms of being recruited by a big-time program. I was recruited very lightly by a couple of very small D3 programs, so can't relate at all to the what that is like.
What kind of nutrition bar did those schools have?
Oh man, I'm telling you, it was all about the Nature Valley granola bar, is my recollection. Listen, if I'm a 17 or 18-year-old hotshot, right, and I'm like, we've all seen the videos or read the stories of like Jerry Rice and his training and regimen, and Matt Millen talks about what he went through just on their own.
Right?
Are you really telling me that the elite athletes they're looking at Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State, and USC, and it's like, man, I don't know where to go. This one has good program that I'm looking at academically, but man, did you see the design of that weight room? I mean, right, you're lifting weights. It's 250 pounds, whether it's with shiny new barbells or old iron, like, you're lifting weight. That's what you're doing. You are getting a shower. I mean, I want a facility that has running water. I want some towels. I mean, I get it. And yes, I get bells and whistles oh, wow, this place is committed. I get it as far as it goes. But you sit down with your parents at the end of the day, and it's like, yeah, I'd love to go to Penn State, but man, this place, did you see the new, their windows were sparkling clean, and you could look out onto that's really going to be the difference or the coach's offices. Is like, yeah, man, I'd like to go to Penn State. And sure, those were nicely renovated offices, but that brand new oak desk that was clearly an antique and refurbished at Coach Johnson's. I got to go to Coach Johnson. That place just gets it. Like, really? We think that's and maybe again, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Never. I guess I would like to think, and maybe I'm in the wrong, but I would like to think you go to a kid and say, listen, I'm going to care about you. I'm going to be on your tail to get you an education that can open up doors, whether or not your athletic career works out or not. And listen, yes, athletically, we're going to do everything we can to get you properly trained, prevent injuries, get you in front of the scouts. I mean, I get all of that. But at the end of the day, right, does it not matter more like how you're being cared for than provided for? And I don't know. It just...
I think, look, I think the whole conversation
just something disheartening about the whole recruiting process to begin with to me. And again, it's why I probably could never get into coaching, because the idea of James Franklin or any coach, I have to go impress you. No, you're 17 or 18. I don't care what you've done in a high school. You haven't done squat yet with your life. You impress me.
Yeah.
You tell me what you're going to provide. How hard are you going to work? I don't know.
Look, I think
I don't want to get carried away with it. I mean, I get it as far as it goes. And I mean, I really do. And I understand the need for facilities and keeping up with the Joneses and all of it is, again, as far as it goes, I get it. It's just that at some point, I'd like to think that it matters a little more, and that these kids that are trying to figure out their futures are weighing more than how neat a coach's office or a locker room or a weight room looks. Is just what I would like to think.
Yes, I think that's true. I think the whole conversation is I think it's fundamentally dishonest. I think it is. And whether it comes from... what's a polite way for me to say this?
You don't need to be polite.
Okay,
not
fine.
in this company.
Look, whether it comes from stupidity or enlightened self-interest in trying to kiss up to the existing regime, I think either way, to simply reduce we talked about the last 4 years of the Franklin era at Penn State. And that is, let me add them up, 6, 11, 15 losses. And at least 6 out of the 15, so roughly a third, Penn State had the lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And we lost.
Yep.
Over the course of James's time here, 38% of his losses have come with the lead in the fourth quarter. So to chalk that up as nothing more than margin of error depth issues because we don't have like digital foot massagers in the locker rooms is ludicrous. Like, in all honesty, like, do you not remember seeing that reveal video where they had just redone the locker room and there was neon everywhere and the kids were running through and jumping up and down? Like, is that just garbage now? Because that was 2 years ago. That was 2 years ago. And to me, does not look, when I see the tour that Jason Kabinda gave Maria Taylor of the football facilities back in 2017, or I see that locker room reveal video from 2019, it doesn't look that different from this stuff that is supposed to shame me into being supplicant to James and whatever his agent wants from the Board of Trustees, which, by the way, they will give him. Let's not gloss that over. Yeah. Am I supposed to believe that it's that different? Because I don't think that it is. And as sure as hell isn't different enough that we ought not be losing to Brett Bielema and a crappy Illinois team at home on homecoming. I think it is just a fundamentally dishonest way of thinking and conversing about the program. And going back full circle to what we were talking about, what's frustrating to me is I don't even care about that stuff so much. Like, I think college football, in terms of competing for its championship, is so fundamentally broken and has such problematic issues with its priorities. I don't even care. I truly don't care if Penn State isn't competing to win the college football championship. I would love to see it. But if I were given two choices, and one of them was, in most years, Penn State's going to vacillate between 8 and 11 wins. You will have a chance to be in the conversation once every 5 years, but you'll never be totally embarrassed by the product on the field. Some years you'll be frustrated. Some years you'll be pleasantly surprised, but you're going to top out around 11 wins. And you're going to do that consistently, but the players are going to graduate. They are going to benefit from their association with Penn State University, not just now, but through the rest of their life. And it's going to be something that you feel is something that you can be proud to be connected to as an alum. That's option number one. Option number two is you will get a national championship. You will get to go with all your friends and see 2 playoff wins and celebrate and be thrilled like you were when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. But we are going to completely upend the values of the place of football vis-a-vis the broader mission of higher education that has been part of Penn State your entire life. Yeah. And we're going to spend $500 million on football facilities. And frankly, who cares if the kids benefit through their lives? They got to come in here and produce for the 4 to 5 years they're part of the program. I would pick the former, and that's just me. No, but the other point is, I don't begrudge someone who would say, screw that, I want the title. Yeah. You have just as much a right to support Penn State football and have a say in this conversation as a member of the fan or alum or donor community, maybe all three, whatever. But I'm just saying that for me, I talked about it before. Cutthroat, win or lose, that's the NFL. Bigger picture, what are the institutional values, and are they reflected in the way you conduct your football program? Or is the way you conduct your football program reflecting on what you do as a university? Like, is it college football or football facilitated by a college, right? Like, I just, to me, I put the college first.
So here's,
and that's just me. I'm not judging anybody who does it. I just don't want to be told I'm not even allowed a seat at the table anymore because I don't know, but I don't even know. I don't understand any of it. I don't know. It just pisses me off. I hate it.
No,
this has been the worst. This is the worst Penn State football season of my lifetime. Just in terms of the toxic, stupid dialogue around it. Not I'm going to be glad when it's over, which sucks.
Yeah. Now, let's just let's move ahead for the sake of our own sanity. This season is over. However it ends up, it doesn't really matter. So however you want the scenario to play out, let's pretend it happened, that or whatever you're expecting, that they're 9-4 and they romped in the last 3 games, or they're 6-7 and it was just a complete collapse, whatever. This season is over, and James Franklin stays. They're launching into next season. Because this is the other part for me, is it is not going to take much. And again, I'm just speaking for me. I completely understand, even more so than you're understanding people that would take the national title there. I am completely understanding people that have no faith or no optimism about the what could happen next season or over the next couple of years. But presuming the recruiting class, and I think it's going to hold pretty steady. They may lose a recruit or two here. They'll likely get another recruit or two to replace them. So whatever. But it's going to be about what it is, which is, at least a very good class of, one of the better classes in the country and in the conference. And I think I feel pretty confident about that, regardless of how this thing
pretty well
up.
locked in to be James's second top 10 class here.
So, yeah. And to your point with core values and all of that, right? I can cite you so many examples, including you go through the early 2000s with Joe Batordo, and then voila, there's 2005 for you. And I get it. I mean, I'm the same person that I really did. I was all in this year. It felt to me going into that Iowa game. I mean, that wasn't just, hey, let's have fun with the fans. I truly, truly believed going into that Iowa game. And we'll never know, and I understand that, and hypotheticals do you no good. I do think if Sean Clifford stays healthy, I think we're still looking at a one-loss team now. There's obviously no way I can prove it. It doesn't do any good to get into that discussion, but I think Penn State romps over Iowa. I think it is a very confident team that isn't missing a beat and isn't trying to protect Sean Clifford in any way. Again, I'm talking just a healthy, completely healthy, or as healthy as any player is week to week. But I think they win those 2 games. I still think they end up losing to Ohio State, but that maybe is even a closer game. And I think they, again, no way to prove it. I just think Penn State at that point, a lot more to play for, a lot. I just think that they find a way to win that game with Michigan. And again, this is irrelevant in the overall scheme of things, I understand. But I really think a healthy Sean Clifford, and this is the whole way through, and this is an entirely different season. But it wasn't, and it isn't, and that's the way it goes. But I do think, again, I can still see the scenario where next year and over the next couple of years, depending on what happens quarterback next year, and depending on how some of these offensive linemen that are coming in, how quickly they can establish some things, I do think this team, this program, can get back right into the mix, and I think it can be a wonderful lesson in persevering through adversity. Right? I mean, you can. If you remember that 2005 season, by the end of it, it was all the videos were all over the place. The Lions left for dead, and you can see that type of revival for the program and the electricity. And again, I don't think this team or this program is that far. I realize it feels like it. 0-5 start last year. You've lost 4 of your last 5. But again, the Illinois game being the exception. This season I'm talking about, Penn State was in every game, and at the time was playing a good, certainly not great, but it was a good Iowa team that night that Penn State played. And again, I think Penn State was on its way to a romp in that game. Penn State played very respectably, at the very least, against Ohio State. And again, obviously the Michigan game was winnable. It is a game that I would argue Penn State should have won. And so the point is they're not that far away, and it's not like it's going to take drastic changes to see this team a year from now be able to, again, you get 3 more touchdowns this season, right? You're talking about a team that has 1 loss and is in the mix going in down the stretch here.
Yep.
So, is it possible
Again,
to get that dynamic quarterback play and all of that?
I'm not pessimistic about the state of the program at all. I'm not down on it. I absolutely cannot wait for this season to be over. I was so excited for it to start. I cannot wait for it to be over, in part just so I don't have to be lectured to by fans or media or anyone else about how it's my fault that we lost these stultifying, idiotic games like the Illinois game. I just need a break from it, man. Maybe that's how James feels too. I don't know. I'm bullish. I really am still.
I am too. But here's another thing, just to think about.
It's hard to win. Hell, Oregon's in the top 4 and they stink. They're not much better than we are.
No. And this is another thing, is how many fan bases over a 5-year, let's just take the last 5 years. How many fan bases do you think are truly happy? Because I think it's 1, maybe 2. And I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think even in total that Alabama fans are all thrilled with Nick Saban and some of the losses.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna say there are 2. Base, so 1 is obviously Alabama. Yep. You know who else's fans I think are actually pretty happy? I think Oklahoma's fans are pretty happy. I think they know what they are and they're happy to be that.
Yeah. Now here's the thing.
And Wisconsin.
And
the happiest fans on earth are Wisconsin fans. God love those people. There are no national title aspirations at all. Do you realize how happy they are? They're going to go to the Big Ten title game and get absolutely blown out. They're going to get their doors blown off by Ohio State. They couldn't be happier to be. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. So there are 3.
Yeah, there are
and only one of them.
Is
2 of them are happy because they're content to not be title contenders, and one of them wins every damn year. So yeah, not good. 130 FBS programs. That's a bad percentage, Head.
Yeah, so that's to me that's the other part of the equation. As frustrating and disappointing as this is, again, over a 5-year period, there are not many programs. In fact, there's probably about 5 or 6 that haven't had a substantially disappointing season. Again, Clemson maybe this year, but prior had a great run. Obviously, Alabama, but even those teams have had bad losses. I mean, Alabama's had some bad losses under Nick Saban.
Sure.
Dabo Swinney has certainly had some bad losses at Clemson. I mean, inexplicable losses in the overall scheme of things. When you look at the matchups and what Clemson is able to do at the end of the season, it's like, how in the world?
How about this? If
Syracuse or Pitt,
if a couple of plays go the other way, I mean, truly, what's his name, who wears the goggles and kicks for the Colts now, the Georgia kicker makes that field goal, and if a couple plays go the other way in that first Bama Clemson game, and then you throw in the kick 6 Iron Bowl, even Nick Saban has a vocal contingent of fans who are not too happy.
Sure. So again, that's just the nature of sports and big time sports, especially. And I don't know. I'm with you. I think sometimes it's just good to sit back. It's fine to be frustrated. It's fine to be caught up in the moment and all of that. I do think it's okay to sit back also and kind of keep the bigger picture perspective. And listen, I do think when you look overall, and I do want to talk some Penn State hoops as well. Massachusetts just kind of laid it to Penn State in the second half last night.
Do you think that was Pat Chambers' revenge, by the way? Trent Buttrick can't mix.
Oh, my gosh.
He looked like
it was unreal.
What was going on there? That was insane.
It really, I mean,
Steph Curry
really was absurd.
Trent Buttrick looked like Steph Curry last night. That was the ghost of Pat Chambers, even though he's still alive. Coming back to the Bryce Jordan Center.
But that is also sports, right? It's just sometimes things happen that are just inexplicable, and you just shake your head, chalk it up, and move on.
By the way, I guarantee you he cannot hit the broadside of a barn for UMass the rest of the season.
I don't think he's going to have many nights like he had last night.
No.
Maybe one more somewhere along
that guy
the line,
will not
maybe.
hit the ocean from the beach for the totality of his Minutemen career going forward. I guarantee it.
But it is going to be interesting to see that. I am still interested to see how this team develops this season and kind of because, as I've been saying, I think Shrewsbury has hit all of the right notes to this point. Last night's second half notwithstanding, but I want to see how this team responds. I want to see, the lessons that are learned. It's very much about building something for the future. And as we've talked about, basketball, even more so than football, right? It can change one way or another very quickly now from one season to the next. With recruiting and now with the transfer portals and everything else. Again, one season to the next, it can change certainly substantially in football. But in basketball, like you could have easily a 5-22 team one season, jump to 22-5 the following, or vice versa. Because if you lose,
and the dynamics of that sport work both ways too, because you can add talent to your roster, not just through recruiting, but the transfer portal. But it flows out of your opponent's roster so quickly as well. If you have a number of good teams in your conference, in some ways that's good news for you because it's more likely their most talented players are going to be moving on.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's totally unfair to make any kind of a value judgment on Micah Shrewsbury on the way this team plays, because number one, he got here and essentially had to re-recruit his entire roster. And number two, he was stepping into the situation that we all know there are these obstacles to success in Penn State basketball. So what has he done? He's retained a number of the key players. He's brought in a good staff, as we talked about.
Phenomenal staff.
Signed the highest ranked recruiting class in Penn State history. Here is the one thing I am going to look for. The one positive I always gave to Pat Chambers, and he never quite turned the corner the way people were hoping for him to do. The one positive I always gave to Pat was that his teams never stopped playing hard.
No,
even when they knew they weren't the most talented team, and even when the win-loss record had them out of it. So I think the only thing I'm really interested in seeing from Micah's team this year is how do they play down the stretch? Can he keep the guys engaged? If they eat some more bad losses, are they still going to be a tough out every night in conference? And that, to me, like that's the best you can hope for. I think the Big Ten is too good, and it is too early in him putting his imprint on the program to take anything else away from this year.
Yeah, and to that end, go back to football real quickly, and then we'll take a break here, and we'll come back and talk some some other things, NFL, and we may even touch men's soccer and some wrestling here. But because I've had some friends go back to the toxicity surrounding the program right now. It's like, oh man, Penn State's they've packed it in for the season. Listen, the Illinois game was horrible, and again, there's no way around that. But they bounced back, and I'm sorry, they played hard against Ohio State, and the loss to Michigan. That wasn't a team that had given up on the season.
Right.
That is a good Michigan team. I don't know exactly how good. I don't know whether or not the people that are endlessly debating whether or not these are top 5 or top 6 teams that that Penn State is playing, and clearly Iowa was not. Everybody was right there. My point still with that is Georgia is clearly at least one of the top 4 teams. Right now it looks clearly number 1, but clearly one of the top 4. Outside of that, Alabama included, I don't see a team that I look at and just the eye test, if you will. It's, oh man, yep, that's a top 4. That's a playoff type team. Like there's not a team out there. Oklahoma certainly wasn't it. Oregon, again, had a great game at Ohio State. Oregon is not a team that, I mean, you have to have 4 teams at the end of the season in the playoffs, right? But if you're asking me right now, I'm telling you it's Georgia, and then you can flip a coin on any given day between probably 20 other schools.
Yeah.
And Penn State probably is one of them. I think Penn State, as you said earlier, I think Penn State on a given day absolutely could beat Oregon. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
Absolutely. And that Oklahoma team, and that's a good Baylor team. I mean, that's not like it's an embarrassing loss, but that Oklahoma team, I mean, that's not a team that you look at and say, oh man, definitively top 4. And again, Alabama, even I've watched a couple of their games, and that's a good team. I'm not sitting here telling you they've fallen off the face of the
that
earth.
LSU game was eye-opening.
That is not a team. It's not the Alabama that we've been accustomed to, where you just automatically. No, I think they're going to end up there and all of that, but. That is not a team that is overwhelming. Again, outside of Georgia, I just don't. I don't know who you put in there and say, yes, I think Cincinnati's good. I think Cincinnati on a given day probably could beat. I don't know, the debate about, if put Cincinnati in the Big Ten of the SEC. Yeah, I don't think they'd go through without 3 losses in either of those conferences, but that's an opinion. It's meaningless.
Yeah, it's tough to say if you believe, and I don't think you're nuts to say it, that Penn State is so close to being a 1-loss team or better. Like, I don't know that you can definitively take a Cincinnati team that beat a top 10 Notre Dame team. And look, and also it's not their fault. This is the thing that stinks for Cincinnati. It's not their fault the wheels fell off Indiana, right? Yeah. Like, they scheduled that game. They did what they were asked to do. And
I'm telling you, this is the other thing that is difficult to to properly assess. Well, it's impossible to properly assess, because I will tell you that, and I think we've talked about this, but different teams are playing differently at different stages of the season. Indiana, when it played Cincinnati, I will contend was a good team. Not a playoff contending team, not a great team, but a better team than what it is now. It's a beaten down team. It's had injuries.
We're 3 quarterbacks hence from there, right?
Yes.
And a good defense that has spent the whole season covering for the flaws of an offense that keeps going down and down the quarterback depth chart. Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Again, there's ebbs and flows in every season. And so it's like, like everybody's, I told you that last Iowa was a bad one. Iowa wasn't. And listen, I don't think Iowa was ever one of the top 4 teams in the country. But I also think that at that time, Penn State was facing a different Iowa team than what you're going to get here down the stretch of this season. There's just, again, confidence, injuries, all of those things play into it, and momentum. You have a swagger or you don't, and you might at one stage of the season. And again, it can go both ways. It can be a team that it looks like an impressive win because, my God, that team only lost twice. Yeah, but at the stage of the season you beat them, they were without their starting quarterback. Their offensive line was banged up. And, yeah, since then, you beat a bad football team, or at least a team that wasn't playing well. And yeah, maybe that team has now turned the corner, but that's not the team you beat.
Right.
But you get credit for it because, again, that's just the way the system works. But that's
a really good point about Cincy playing Indiana when they were, Indiana's not great, but I think if they would have stayed healthy,
I
think like a 5 or 6 win team versus the total dumpster fire they are now. Yeah.
We'll take a break here. We'll talk a little wrestling when we get back. We'll also talk a little NFL. Oh my God,
the less the better in your mind.
I don't want to win it. Do you want to win it? Heck no, I don't want to win it. You take it. No interest in winning over here. That was the Steelers-Lions game on Sunday. We're back with more of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show after this.
Lion Country Kia is offering exceptional deals on your new Kia during Kia's Command the Season event.
We have a nice selection on the 2021 Kia Sportage with various options and prices as low as $26,800, saving you $3,000. Or if you demand big power and towing capacity, slip into one of the 2021 Kia Sorrentos available on our lot, starting at $32,680.
Discover why Kia drivers throughout the area come to Lion Country Kia or visit online at lioncountrykia.com.
Quaker Steak and Lube is throwing open the garage doors and setting up the umbrellas. It's patio season. Come enjoy great food, drinks, and fun in the sun. There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube, but we're really amping up our event calendars for our favorite time of year. Visit thelube.com to find out what's happening at your local lube this season. Lunch, happy hour, dinner, or late night, indoors or outside, at Quaker Steak and Lube, you'll always find big flavors, friendly faces, and lots of fun.
Hi, Johnny Broom here. If you're in the market for a new Hyundai or a pre-owned car, truck, van, or SUV, nobody beats a Blaze Alexander deal. But don't take my word for it.
Hey, Goon says tell him Johnny sent you.
Hey, tell him Johnny sent ya.
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Wait, tell him Juan or tell him Johnny sent you?
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Here at Bill Pickles Tap Room, we say,
tell him Johnny sent you.
And remember,
And we are back to do a pretty quick wrap. Just real quick on the wrestling team, and it's open to the season. Listen, obviously Penn State has appreciably more talent than Sacred Heart or Oregon State, although I really do like what Chris Pendleton's doing with that Oregon State program, and I think he's building it the right way, which means it's going to take a little while. But I think over the next 2 or 3 seasons, you're going to see Oregon State rise here in the college wrestling world and start to do some really good things and get some individuals pretty frequently on the All-American podium. But at this stage, again, Penn State clearly outclassed both of those teams in terms of wrestling ability. But the two things that stood out, and listen, there's some things that Penn State needs to work on. The bottom game for some of the younger kids in particular, which is not a terrible surprise. That's a pretty common theme in college wrestling is, struggling to get off bottom against more experienced opponents. That tends to be the biggest weakness of even the superstars when they first come in and make that transition. But Penn State's ability to score from the top position, and I just thought the aggressiveness throughout the lineup is exactly what you're hoping to see if you're a fan or a coach right now. I just thought even in the couple of weeks where Penn State was clearly outclassed, the hustle and the aggressiveness, I thought still was there in Penn State's favor. And I think this is going to be a real good test against Army West Point on Thursday night. Army West Point has some really good individuals. Again, Penn State should win the dual meet fairly handily, but there should be 4 or 5 really entertaining bouts here. And I think Bo Bartlett's bout at 149 against Ogasanya, PJ Ogasanya of Army, is going to be both a really good bout and a good measuring stick at this stage of his career. I think Ogasanya's ranked 20th, give or take a spot or two in most of the rankings right now. Bartlett will move into the top 20 here, I think, in fairly short order. But both of those young men are just, if you watch, and I don't know Ogasanya, but I've just in getting ready for the meet, I've been reading and looking at some videos and stuff of them, and not surprising that an Army West Point individual is an impressive young man, but man, he is. And if you have a chance to, they're doing these podcasts now. Mitch Gerber is with Penn State Athletics, and they're doing it with wrestling now this year. And Bo did the first one of these, I think, a week or two ago, and you talk about an impressive young man who carries himself with just a wonderful presence and understanding of perspective of life for that age and for all of his accomplishments. I'm really excited to watch that bout, as much because I have so much respect for the two men involved as I do the wrestling ability of them both. And that should be a fun one if you're looking to circle one to watch here on Thursday night at Rec Hall. And it's just going to be so much fun to have the fans at Rec Hall again.
About this year's wrestling team. And I know probably what you're going to say, but I gotta ask. Are these guys motivated by any sort of feeling of disrespect based on the national rankings, or do they not care about that?
I've had a few folks ask, and I think Bill Horlocker is going to have a column coming out tomorrow at statecollege.com with on an interview that we did. And I think he was trying to pry that a couple different ways. And listen, I mean, I can't definitively get inside these guys' heads, but
sure.
I truly, and I know it sounds cliche, and I know the fans of opposing programs get tired of it, and they think it's all just, oh yeah, it's easy to say you're just worried about having fun and you're grateful when you're winning all the time. I am telling you, and if you listen to that Bo Bartlett podcast, to me, it is spot on with what has happened here since Cael Sanderson took over the program. And it is that there is, I truly don't think, to answer your question, I don't think they give, I really don't. I don't think they give a rip whether you are rating them as the greatest thing in the world or the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
They are genuinely so focused on wrestling and living a life with purpose and with focus on themselves,
right?
And improving and being the best. And again, I get how hokey it sounds, and I get how it could be a turnoff when you keep hearing over and over, we're just grateful, we're just happy to, but I'm telling you, when you're in that room and when you talk to these guys and you see the way they interact with one another, to me, the biggest thing, and I can't remember if I meant to talk about this, and I don't know if I ever did on this show or not. One of the coolest things, and I think it is so emblematic of what Cael Sanderson has established here at Penn State in an individual sport, and make no mistake, wrestling, there's a team component obviously to it, but it is an individual sport. But Cael has made it truly a team sport here at Penn State. And Jason Nolf was asked for NCAA.com, they're doing this the series with I think athletes across the board on what do you remember from your NCAA career and what are some of the things that you'll miss most and all that. They asked Jason Nolf, can you give us the 3 highlights of your career? 3 biggest highlights that stand out. He's like, oh yeah, he's like Vincenzo Joseph pinning Isaiah Martinez in the finals, Bo Nickel pinning Miles Martin in the finals, and Anthony Cassar winning the national title after everything he had been through. And they're like, yeah, but we were wondering about your career. He goes, well, yeah, that was all 3 of those were in my career.
That's awesome.
And he genuinely didn't understand why they weren't understanding what he was like. It wasn't he was sincerely answering. These were the 3
because
greatest
for him,
moments
the
of my
team
career.
accomplishments were his accomplishments, right?
And I'm telling you, when you go back and you look at one of the coolest things ever, as somebody associated with the program on the periphery for me, was when you go back and you look at the video of Vincenzo Joseph pinning Isaiah Martinez, and there's 2 shots. There's one, you can see the Penn State section behind him, and it's the parents, most of the parents and they are not Vincenzo's parents. The other parents are going nuts, high-fiving each other. Like they would not be more excited. Jason Nickel would not be more excited when Bo wins the national title than he was in that moment for Vincenzo Joseph, because they truly have created that family atmosphere. But you see all of these parents of all of these other kids celebrating as though their kid just won the national title. And in many of those cases, their kid did go on to win the national title. And then you watch again on the floor the other kids on the team. And again, a couple of them are not wrestled yet. They're coming up and they're going absolutely crazy because they have that sincere affection for their teammate and that desire to see him do well. And that, to me, is the coolest thing about Penn State wrestling right now, is that genuine unselfishness and the willingness to put the team before the individual. And real quickly, just on the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger.
You wish that ties no longer existed in college football. And
I wish they would do away. I don't know how I want that decided.
Or I'm sorry,
you
wish that they no longer exist in the NFL and wish they do in college football,
well,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it really was crazy to watch that overtime and neither team wanting to win it. And listen, you had a lot of really great players making bad mistakes, right? On the Steelers in particular. But going back to, Sean Clifford, and we'll kind of circle back to where we started. Listen, and I don't think Mason Rudolph is an awful quarterback, but he's not Ben Roethlisberger. And I get that Ben Roethlisberger now isn't the Ben Roethlisberger of years ago.
Yeah.
But that is the difference between if Ben's out there, like that's not a game that goes to overtime.
No.
I'm not telling you the Steelers rout them. I don't know, but the Steelers win that game.
No, but it's a win.
Regulation.
He's playing well enough
it's
right now for them to win. Yeah, no question.
Yes, they win that. And that is we talk about it. It's not a great revelation here. I understand. Everybody knows the importance of quarterback in the NFL. But, man, you watch Patrick Mahomes play the way Mahomes can, and you see what the Chiefs can do, and you see the Steelers without Big Ben, that they're not going to the playoffs. With him back, I think they can. And listen, the Chargers are having some issues of their own right now. But this is a big game now coming up for the Steelers because of that tie. Now that margin for error that you thought as a Steelers fan you were going to have down the stretch, and not that it was much margin. I realize that a win and you're only forging a tie with the Ravens for the time being. But now again, you're still chasing, and that half game swing just feels bigger than in some ways than a loss would have. Not that I'm not preferring the tie to the loss to the freaking Detroit Lions with or without Ben Roethlisberger.
Though,
just a frustrating weekend
else,
the whole way around on the football front.
If nothing else, the now have a chance to make history as the first 0-16-1 team in NFL history. Think about that. If you do that this year, when is that ever? What is that? You probably have a better chance of becoming the first 0-17 team than the second 0-16-1 team. Like that, I think Detroit should shoot for it.
Representing the Little Lions, hoping they get the job done in the PIAA state playoffs.
For sure,
congratulations,
good for them.
To Coach Lintel and company on getting the district championship. And that is the high note on which we will end today's show. We'll be back on Thursday. Hopefully Goon will be recovered and able to join us. We will talk to you then. Until then, be good and be safe.